when you're ready.
Okay, my name is Becky Julian, and I'm from Indian Brook in Hants County. I was born here on this reserve, and but I was brought up in my first 4 years. I was brought up in Maycan towards Amherst, and then now when my foster parent got tuberculosis, I was sent to my mother, but I didn't believe she was my mother, so I kept running away and looking for my aunt, and that's how I ended up in the residential school. Couldn't run away from there, and but I was born on this community. This is where I was born, and it was almost the center of our community now. But at that time, it was the main part of the community. That's where our community started to grow, and that's before all these roads were put in. And where I used to run away from, my mother used to live across where you first enter the community, and that main road here, was only a path through the woods, and I would run away from her and end up this end. And because I guess they were afraid I was going to get lost, take the wrong turn one of these days, and because it was only a path and a plank that went across the brook, so I ended up in a residential school. And
What's the
I had an argument with the priest the very first day. I asked him why he was lying to the people. I didn't. Well, I had two tutors that were in the army, and you can imagine what they taught me, what to believe in. So I didn't believe anything that the priest said or the nun said in the residential school. And I sort of had didn't hold anything back either. I was said what I wanted to say, and I was in there for 4 years. I came out when I was 9 or 10, 9 I think, and I lived with my mother and my stepfather, and she moved to another community in Pictou County, and we grew up there until, well, I was 15 I think when I left. I went down the States, and I worked down there in Birmingham at a hospital. And then when my stepfather passed away, I moved back up. I told my mother I'll be home, and I stayed home with my mother since then. Yeah. And then she decided to move back to this community, and I wondered why. And then she said, I don't have any relatives here in Pictou County. She said, but all my brothers and sisters are in Shuby, in Hants County. So that's why she moved back here. And we've lived here ever since.
It's nice to be in your home community, hey?
Yeah,
To be able to stay in your home
yeah,
community,
and
that's fantastic.
I later found out that I was born in this community. And I said, it was the very first part, they called it Newtown, I think is what the name was. And it's sort of in the woods, but not far in the woods now. But then that was the main part of the community. And a lot of things changed since then. Yeah,
From when you were as a child, you mean to today?
yeah.
What's been the biggest change here?
The biggest change here is the schools. We have the school now teaches from grade primary to grade 12 in our own community. Before we didn't have. Well, we had that once, but it went up. I think it went up to only grade 6 or grade 8, something like that. And then you had to go somewhere else to finish if you wanted to go high school. But most of the kids around here just only went here because they couldn't afford to go to a boarding school, even though the schooling was paid for, but nothing else was paid for. So they would have to pay for their trip and whatever necessities they needed. And so a lot of our people never finished school. Yeah.
So the school is in the community.
The
The
school is
K
in
to
the
12
community.
now.
Yes.
Yeah. And does the school incorporate traditional knowledge?
Yes.
Oh,
They,
good.
they teach. I was a teacher up there too. I was one of the teachers, and I taught the language. And there was 2 or 3 of us working at that time that were teaching the language. And we taught the children how to write and all the things they needed to that we could teach them in our language. First, I used to teach down the community down Shubi, and when we got our own school up here, they transferred us all up here, all our native students and our teachers came up here and taught. And I worked there until I retired at 72. Yeah. And it took me a couple of years to get used to the idea of staying home all day and not doing anything. Yeah.
So the language is taught in the schools,
Yes.
and then are traditional ways of being taught in the schools to the children.
Yeah, it's
History.
more like shown to them too. There's one of the teachers goes out in the woods and shows them the different trees and stuff and what they're used for. And somebody always takes them down fishing. They go fishing and they see how it's done. And we don't have a lot of waterfront like some communities do, but they do take them down to the river and they can fish down there. And if they have little boats or something like that, but they don't have the great big boats like people do that live by the ocean.
Do they do in the schools now? Are the children learning the stories of the nation and the communities? I know, like in my community, or where I grew up, oftentimes the elders would tell us traditional stories.
Yeah.
Stories about, the mountains or the creatures of the sea, but they would tell it from their perspective, right? So if they would learn from their grandparents and they would teach their children, and then they would.
I don't think we do that up here, unless it's somewhere written in one of the books or by one of the other elders that came before us. Yeah, and there's some recordings that are out there that they do, and because when we taught when I first started teaching them, I taught them how our people lived and how they lived in different communities.